Hey, welcome to This Life in Tech, episode 155. I'm Jason.
And I'm TK.
And we're Danless.
Danless is off probably being a big kid at Michigan this weekend, working on the last part of his MBA.
Yeah, man, he's almost there. We were just talking about in the pre-show. We're both proud of him.
Yeah, very.
I'll get my little cap and throw it in the air for him.
I'll throw a baseball hat in the air for him.
Yeah, well, but I have the TAM, a doctor. So it's kind of like a big beret, not the board. And so it kind of jellyfishes through the air. So you can't really throw it too well.
I saw a great tweet this week. It was someone I know had just gotten their doctorate, and they had the big TAM on, and they were like, I busted my ass to wear this silly hat.
It's amazing how it happened to me too when I went through it. And of course, because I knew I was staying in academia full time, I wear that regalia probably at least 2-3 times a year, maybe more, depending on what's going on. And so you invest in like let's say the prototypical, not the cheap kind that you wear once, but the real ones.
You don't get the gear off the rack. You get the custom made stuff.
Yeah, dude, it is stupidly expensive.
I would imagine so.
Well, and because I don't think I should say it this way. I think there's large parts of it that have to be hand sewn.
Yeah.
You can't do it on a machine, but man, I love putting mine on. The hat's hot. But the roads I'm down with.
Wait till your first springtime graduation in North Carolina. Whew.
Well, dude, we had in August, we do a big ceremony. Yeah, we do a big ceremony when the fall semester starts, and it's outside, and there's no cloud cover, there's no trees. The only time I got like a fresh breath of air was when Clark the Eagle let loose and he flew right over us.
When somebody coughed on you.
Yeah.
I tell you what, there's nothing but you, the fruited plains, and the sun.
Yeah.
Right? And all the humidity that life can offer.
Yeah. And then the only thing I was thinking was, why did I choose to wear tight pants today?
Tight pants?
Yeah. Like they're a little too tight.
Why do you choose to wear pants at all? You got a full length gown,
They just wear tall socks.
Maybe that's just me.
It's crossed my mind. It's crossed my mind that, why this is not what I intended to talk about today, but here we go. Wait a second. There
you go.
So sometimes I do think, man, like, why has men's fashion not changed in hundreds of years? Like, we still basically have suits in one form or another. It's a suit, and that's it.
But it's funny. I think it is changing. If you go watch a video. Go watch the History Channel and look at the 50s, or shortly after World War II. Right? You go look when I was watching his incredible documentary on the history of the CIA the other day.
Okay.
Showing that subsequent to World War II, when the OSS transferred to the CIA, they largely went to all the Ivy League schools and everything and grabbed every smart person that had a sense of patriotism or however you want it and said, come with us. And they were showing the campuses, just kind of like B-roll footage. And they were showing the campuses, and everybody's walking around. Certainly, maybe not a tie, but everybody, men's fashion was you wore slacks and a jacket, right? And then over the years, it's gone awry, right? Well, now, especially in the tech industry, go to RSA, right? You see people walking around in suits. I'm talking suit with a shirt and a tie. Mm-hmm. They're investors, right? You see what people walking around with jeans and a nice blazer and a button-up shirt. They're tech executives. And they see people walking around with hoodies and stuff from, and stuff from, T-shirts from the event. They're all the developers, and they're the doers, right? Yeah. What a great tribal concept, right? I can walk in and I start talking to people. I know where I'm at, right? And then there's, you've got people in the middle that are sales guys, and there's some, depending on what they're at the booth with and how they're trying to portray their company, they've done that. But I love that tribal nature where it's like, hey, we're not all trying to be replicants where everybody's got to show up and do the right thing. Look at every stock video you've ever seen about NASA and the moonshot. You've got people turning wrenches on the Apollo spacecraft, and they're in a white shirt with a thin black tie. Everybody dressed identically. And then if you go to the math department, right, everybody at NASA's math department in front of one of those massive chalkboards, they're all in black pants, white shirt, and a black tie. And they put their jacket on when they leave work,
Yeah.
What, we were a lot more homogeneous in the 50s and 60s, and not necessarily in a great way sometimes. Right.
Yeah.
And so, and again, you've heard me say this all the time. I want to celebrate diversity, but I want to celebrate diversity of thought. And part of that diversity of thought is going, I really don't like a suit. I like jeans, and okay, I'll entertain you guys and wear a sport coat because it's part of what I'm supposed to do and it's kind of comfortable. But, or I've got to wear a tam and the big regalia twice a year, but why do I have to wear pants underneath it, right? That's I mean, just say you're Scottish and you lose your mind every time you do it.
Well, yeah, man. And you could get away with it at High Point because we have the pipers. Like we have a legitimate Scottish piper band that comes through in the beginning and the opening of every big ceremony, and they have kilts on. But
let's see that.
Well, and what I've kind of figured out too from at least my fall social experiment, wearing a shirt and tie, which by the way, now I don't feel comfortable without. So I kind of duped myself into it, I guess. Especially around certain groups that have normatively established that as, let's say, and this is our transition to what we were actually going to talk about,
right.
a group ethic or an ethical standard for behavior. It's kind of like if you see a bunch of wildebeest drinking at a lake, and they see that big Nile crocodile creep up, and they all get real nervous. Like, is this thing going to eat us, or is it just trying to get some air now? You know what I mean?
Right.
And so if you're the crocodile that looks like a wildebeest a little bit, they don't get so nervous. Like they're a little more accepting of your presence.
Right. I think there's a lot of that, when people put a lot of effort in, but here's the thing, a lot of times it can go awry, right? There's, hey, I want people to understand that, overarching, I'm empathetic to what you do and who you are, but you get somebody 55, 60 years old showing up with, who is a tech executive, for example, and showing up with a pair of, flip-flops on and jeans and a t-shirt. They're like, okay, you're of this tribe. You're not of this tribe. You're trying to be part of the tribe. And we understand where you fit into that system, right? And it comes back to, we don't have to be the same.
No, totally.
Everybody's got their role to play, and don't be who you are. Don't try to fake your way into another group. Be who you are and be established as part of that overarching group.
Yeah. Exactly. Oh man. So this week in tech, look at that transition. That's smooth, man. I love StreamYard. This is so much better than the old Hangouts on Air system. These guys have done a bang up job.
Oh no, they've nailed it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I think we both agree. Speaking of This Week in Tech, it's only a matter of time till they get acquired by Google,
somebody,
or Facebook, or somebody that they've made this so easy to do, because they just, on the pro version, they just keep adding the amount of of direct streaming that you can do, and multiple streams to multiple outlets. I mean, if you've got, if you're an enterprise and you want to do these, especially if you want to do short little 5 minutes about, if I'm building, why wouldn't you use StreamYard?
Yeah.
Unless you want to heavily edit it beforehand, and then you can use whatever you want, because then you're gonna package it up and post it. But if you just want to, like if you were at RSA or you're a Black Hat or whatever, this would be great to do.
I think so. Yeah. I'd be anxious to see how this might scale into other things, but I'm always impressed with it.
Yeah.
So with that said, ethics and technology. I was thinking about this week. There's a lot of talk about ethics around AI. And I don't necessarily want to talk about AI specifically as a technology, but just more in general. And so this idea that we ought to have this overarching set of rules or standards within which we operate. And to me, it's always kind of weird to think about with technology. I think mainly because you're trying to come up with an idea of how everybody ought to use a tool based on how you use the tool, right? I don't know how to escape that thought. Like, I envisioned this thing to be this thing, and so it works this way for me, and therefore it must work this way for everybody else. How do you kind of think about it? Do you think about it that way, or do you think about it differently?
I think it's a life thing, though, right? It's not just this, like, people get, hey, I do something a certain way, and I want everybody else to exhibit my behavior, right? It's how you have, in politics, you have the far left and the far right, right? Everybody, the 80% in the middle is just trying to figure it out and get along and make the country move along, right? But on either end, you've got crazies on either end that they want their way and they don't want anybody else to do anything but their way.
Right.
And so I'll use AI because, for those of you who don't know that, I'm part and parcel of running an AI company. And I think the generic term AI, for example, is so misleading in so many ways, right? I have a buddy of mine that he's an amazing guy. He's getting ready to go be the commanding officer of an aircraft carrier. And as a really senior guy in the Navy now, they want them to understand the people piece and the money piece. So between the time that he did his last job and the time that he's going to take over, they put him in procurement. And what people are coming in peddling their wares all the time, and because they think they have something to sell. And with AI, the guy's been in nuclear power school, right? He understands math, right? We're not, and they'll go, the math is really hard. You don't understand it, right? He's like, no, give me a whirl, I'll go, right? Well, you know how I feel about this. In anything, when you're trying to sell it, talk about it, teach it, here's a dry erase marker. Get up on the board and at least give me a overarching, Big Bird Cookie Monster type map of what you're selling. And he goes, they can't do it. And here's the problem with AI. True AI, the AI that scares people, right? The AI that scares the prattling crowd. That's very limited, right? There's few organizations, people, whatever, that are doing it and doing it well and leading towards that outcome where machines can have a greater control over taking tasks away from people that people normally think about, right?
Right.
And then on the other end, you have data science, which is, here's a big, huge bucket of numbers or data. And I think the one that I like to use because people can get it is resumes, right? We've made all this resume software. And what does resume software usually do? You get a big pile of resumes, you put it in a big bucket, and then you tell a tool, use these keywords, and I want you to go beat the daylights out of the data until the resumes say uncle and give me the ones that we move on. I personally believe that's a horrible way to go about hiring people. Right. Because what you do is you get people that'll take the time and look at each individual job application and pull out keywords and manipulate the system. Do I want somebody that manipulates the system, or do I want somebody that's competent? And they might be the same people, but I think all evidence of how quickly there's turnover in jobs, and HR data backs this up, that we have to come up with a different way. And so as I talk about what the company that I'm with can do, we talk in terms of decision intelligence, right? And so the IP that we have and how the product functions is we want to have the tools help you think faster like humans think. Here's my example. As a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, you get up in the morning, or in my case, a 15-year-old, you look outside, it's sunny out, and you're like, all right, I don't need a coat. Well, as an adult, you're like, well, I'm going to go to work, then I got to go here. When the sun goes down, it's really cold, so I might want to layer. I want to think. And so there's multiple inputs into what you do. Right. Early days of data science and stuff, it's not inputs, it's you're extracting data, right? Now, we have IP that says, hey, I want to use historical data to help me make better decisions today. And so how do we do that? But it's all based on asking questions. And with those questions, you start being able to give answers. One of the models that we were using recently, it was 180 inputs, right? And it was relevant. It wasn't just straight voltage stuff like, hey, what color is the jacket you're going to wear out? But in certain group, that might, with my 15-year-old, hey, if that jacket doesn't match the pants, I'm going with a tank top today because I have to be, I think, and that's, again, it's what audience, right? But I think that's more like what mass marketed intelligence can be. Digital intelligence, right, is more of a decision engine than true neural AI. I think where some great work is being done is at the network level. And for example, so as a start, you and I walk into the Apple store and we buy an iPhone. Those two tools are identical until what? Until we plug our Apple IDs in. Yeah, and then based on our usage, they're no longer interchangeable. Right?
They're not the same device anymore.
Right. If you handed me your iPhone, even if you told me what your passcode is, once I got there, just the address book alone renders it almost useless to me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, think about that when you start going in and you start doing cybersecurity, and you say, I've got a box, I've got this AI neural engine, right? And I know one, maybe two companies they're on the right track. I mean, they're far down the road, and it's an impressive product, but they truly are living AI. And as the zeros and ones come into that network and start pounding it with good, bad, and indifferent, it starts to say, okay, what am I supposed to let? It sees what all the other tools are letting through, and then it learns and it starts cataloging bad stuff. So the blade that gets put in, or the cloud instance that gets installed in your environment, over time, there might be certain pieces of it that are generic. Like, hey, here's a piece of generic malware that's globally acknowledged, and it's hitting everybody. Or is this specific to my business, my industry, based on what we do?
Right.
But in the beginning, we work in a place, or we live in a place now, where everybody gets scared of everything. Why? Because this moves at the speed of light. Right? Yeah. It's not like, hey, well, what do we put out on television? Well, what are the checks and balances before something gets on TV? Oh, well, what are the checks and balances before something gets on the internet?
Yeah.
Zero. Right. Zero.
Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. Well, it's effectively zero. And it's highly skewed too, right? And I think this is, to me, sometimes where I think about I always try to separate it this way. There's the ethics of how we ought to use a technology. And in particular with AI, there can be the ethics we want the AI to have itself, especially as you get closer to true, let's say sentience, right? For lack of a better term, or consciousness, right? The closer you get to that, I think the more important it might be for it to have an ethic that's at least in part shared with us, as at an organism level. So just the ethic of using it, I think, is what most people think about. And I mean, look at Twitter. We've talked about this too, right? Twitter can be horribly skewed towards one political side versus the other, simply because what people click on.
Right.
And it's not even what people are interested in. It's almost like a product of outrage culture, right? Like, I want to see what these assholes are up to. Click, 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 click. It's spying on the adversary. So, is a good way to think about it. And so there's an ethic, I think, perhaps that's questionable in, as a company providing that platform, as a technology, what's the impact to society in doing good or doing harm, and allowing the algorithm to function that way? Because the algorithm as a technology is just doing what it's supposed to do. It's looking at classification of likes and dislikes, let's say, and
doing what somebody told it to do. Right?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
That's where we're at right now. It's doing what somebody told it to do. Where we're going is it has the ability to do what it wants to do. Oh, we locked up Dan, or we locked up Jason. Now we're live on the TK Hour.
I'm back.
Can
you hear me?
Now we're live on the TK Hour. I'm not sure you're ready for that.
I don't know what happened, man. I got a little network interruption.
It's out on the farm. Every now and then it happens, right?
Yeah, well, I don't know, man. I had to switch over to another network connection. But hey, look, we'll pause that conversation real quick and point out once again how good StreamYard is. Because look at that. I think you were still online because I heard you talking for a second.
Yep.
But the show didn't pause. It let me right back in, and we pick up right where we left off.
No, perfect. But to jump just before we get off on a crazy tangent, let's get right back in, because this is what we're trying to defend against.
Yeah, exactly. And so what I was saying was, I think the AI we have, largely speaking, I'm generalizing right now, is still goal-oriented, and we define the goal as the AI engineer. And so we'll say, like, hey, if I have a social media platform, the way I get more users is by putting, let's say, popular content in front of their eyes. And so I'm going to use the users to classify what's cool by clicking like. And then the things, I'm really oversimplifying this, the things that I'll learn what people click on and like, and then I'll bubble that to the top for everybody.
Right.
Well, and now you can see how that gets skewed, because clicking on something or clicking like doesn't mean I actually like it. It means I've interacted with it in a way in which I want to archive it, for lack of a better word, right?
It means I've acknowledged. I've acknowledged it, right? And because there's no dislike button for a bunch of other really funny psychological reasons, that it skews it even further. Because the funny thing now, you'll see on on Instagram in particular, they'll put up two pictures and it'll be like for this, ignore for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, neither one of those, like it doesn't work that way. Right. Yeah. It's just, to get at the basic, like life just doesn't work that way. I don't, you don't like something or ignore it. Right. It's not binary.
Right.
And
No.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, when I think about it, I would think if you really were interested in having that algorithm learn so that it tailors itself to tailoring content for people, right?
Right.
Because clicking like or dislike really provides like a metadata or a meta tag, right? Let me label stuff. And so like when I've built my own interface to certain social media platforms so I can escape that little trap, that's what I do. I just look for keywords. Just like I don't know how you interact with your bookmarks in your browser. The way I do it is I bookmark it. I make sure it has a title that I kind of know, and then I abuse meta tags. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter how I categorize anything anymore. I have like this third dimension to my data. So I can search for X, and I'll get everything that's tagged with X. And it doesn't matter if it's in the name anymore. It's what I know it to be. Yeah.
Right. I think, this is what scares people about true AI. It's twofold. One, I've heard politicians and people in there, when they start talking about social media, it's like, we need to find a way to ensure that it's truthful. Right. Well, the first question is, whose truth? Right. Is it what you agree with, or is it the truth? Right.
Right.
And right now it's largely everybody's read all the stories about every social media platform having a small group of people that have access to how things bubble to the top, skewing it for their social, political, socioeconomic, whatever views. And so you're seeing more of one group and not another. Mm-hmm. How do we, if you let true AI go and it just looks at the raw data and says, and does algorithmic analytics, and it starts, how does that change? Or do we cue the AI? Like, is it programmed in that we're looking for a certain thing? Because I think right now, when you talk about the ethics of social media, why are certain groups getting blocked? Right. To the point where, and it's like a group like Prager University, you can agree with them or disagree with them, but they are, they'll take it to the Supreme Court against Google about why their videos have largely been banned, and not banned in a thing, but functionally been banned on YouTube. Why is that? Right. And again, now you start talking labeling. Right, the ethics of labeling other groups of people, right? And it has nothing to do but marginalizing and discounting their opinion. We're doing that at the speed of people with aid of a computer, right? Mm-hmm. Now, what happens when we do it at the speed of light?
Right.
And like I said, it comes back to give me diversity of thought, and neither the left nor the right are clean white oversuits when it comes to the diversity of thought thing, right? People want they want their opinion, right? And when we start in the public space using opinion as fact, right, then now we have a bigger ethical problem.
Well, and I think you're hitting on something too with the speed of light idea, because think back to the internet even maybe 10 years ago, right? A lot of discourse happened through forums. Right. Kind of like the old bulletin board days. Yeah. And so in a forum that you joined, seemingly maybe because there was like thought going on, because it's a forum for X. Right. You would still have moderation of the content. And it was very clear when something got moderated, because in some way or form, there was a mod that came in, and it was a human being that changed the content, and that content would be tagged, altered by, edited by, moderated by that user, and the content would be, let's say, removed. Okay, that doesn't happen anymore. It's way more subtle, and it happens so fast that not the information is being tailored without you being aware of it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's almost like we're back to sitting around a campfire, and one person is just giving your view of the world, but because they're the source of all knowledge and information, you have no way to know otherwise.
I think about it like this. So, I've talked about this on the podcast before. You go back to the dawn of time, and it was usually elders, right? And elders were probably 20 at the time, right? Because if you survived from 20, back
right.
back in caveman days, that was a good, just on disease alone, right? You get to where we had the town crier, right? And largely because a lot of people were illiterate, and you had a very small group of people that could read or accept the information. So it was one to many. Then they started posting things, in the town square. Then we had newspapers, right? And once we had newspapers, it was a big one-way discussion. And up until the 90s even, it was letters to the editor, right? If you got pissed on a Monday, you had to, that turnaround time to get rid of your angst was long, right? And and it might not make it in there, right? If people thought you were a whack job or whatever, or they just completely disagreed with your opinion, they weren't going to give you the mic, right?
No.
Tell it. Then all of a sudden, radio happened, and it was starting to be a two-way medium. And then the U.S. government hijacked the airwaves, and they started selling spectrum, left a very small spectrum for ham operators and things like that for civil radio usage, which I find it's almost heartwarming that there's still big communities out there of ham operators, right? There's a huge community in the Virginia Beach area, right? Jason Cooper, his father is a really big part of that. Right now, like if you don't know somebody that's part of it, you don't know it exists, right? Or you're not in the consciousness, right? And they're doing a lot of stuff to move to the 21st century, right? Because the novelty of big high antennas and all that stuff that waveforming and things like that. So you had that, and then all of a sudden they absconded with the airwaves, and now you went back to a one-way conversation, right? Being told what it is. Mm-hmm. Then you move to television, right? By the expense and power, everything, it was always meant to be a one-way discussion. All right, here's a box, sit there and stare at it. And in the news, 3 times a day, or 3 times a day locally, but once for half an hour nationally, icons of what we consider to be America, right? Especially from the 50s to the 80s, would tell you 3 stories. That's what's important. And then tell you what the stock market was doing. And I remember it yesterday when I was a kid, right? And even today, I don't know how many people watch the network news, but it's largely the same thing. We do 3 stories, and then we tell it. Well, then the internet showed up. Wild, wild west, right? Guns a-blazing, information going back and forth as quickly as it can. A lot of times I look at it like, hey, we're trying to get back to the one-way conversation. Right? Because when we start saying, this is a big part of the cancel culture, I disagree with you, now I'm going to cancel you. Right? I don't want dissent. Right? Well, nothing great in human history has ever happened without dissent. Ever. Right?
Right.
But, a lot of bad shit's happened without dissent. Right? We can go back through history and, pick a side. I don't care. We'll find something you don't like, because we stifle dissent, right? And right now, I think we're in that ethical, moral, political transition period where everybody wants what they say to count the most, right? Yeah. And in order to do that, everybody's like, I want to take the reins of the pony, and I don't want anybody else to tell the pony where to go. And I think that's the problem, and then the big ethical dilemma creeps in.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a great example of the internet and the associated technologies, right? From the inception of it, at least in the public realm, which, at least for me, was probably around the mid-90s, when things got affordable and accessible in a mainstream way, right? You could get a decent computer for not much, with a modem, and you had AOL, and you had this book of numbers. You could go anywhere in the US and dial in, and you had access for what, 10, $15 a month or something, I think it was.
Yeah.
It was glorious, and I think now we're just really starting to figure out how to harness the power of it. And I like that idea that we're still kind of in this intermediary stage, almost like our tweens, right? Where you're still a kid, but you're trying to figure out how to be an adult, but you really can't handle it. But you also don't want to listen to anybody else tell you how to do it, right?
Right.
You got to experience it. And I think that's kind of what's going on and has been going on, is every kind of group, every subculture, every community is kind of taking their turn on how to use it and run it for themselves and for other people in some cases, right? And we're just not quite sure how to do it effectively.
But I think now there's still a massive frustration that individuals, you believe what goes on behind the curtain, what you can't see, the Wizard of Oz stuff, what you can't see behind the curtain is that, and I've heard people say this, they're consumer users of the internet, right?
Right.
They have jobs, whatever, but it's not like technology is not their day-to-day thing. Technology happens to them. They're not trying to affect the global change in technology. And it's almost like there's always a view that there's the global cartels of people that are, every time if somebody wants to have a strong opinion, if they're an individual, they don't feel that theirs counts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Once you remove the one voice theory from the internet, right? Because that was part of the big attractor to folks, is that, hey, anybody can go on, anybody can have a voice. I can make a web page, I can do this, I can do that. Well, and I just started thinking about this. If you say, hey, how do I want to start controlling what content people have access to? I create social media networks, message boards of the 21st century, where essentially anonymous people have the ability to stifle what other people see and hear. All right.
Yeah. Well, you can use, especially social media. And this is what we're seeing, the way I interpret it, where a minority can weaponize a platform and use it against the majority.
Right. Or the majority can really hold down the minority. Right. And, I think it's funny. Look, when in politics, like, I don't watch news on the television anymore. I can't, I don't care which side's talking to me. I don't care what channel it is. I watch the local news because I want to know what the weather is and maybe like the traffic, and living in Virginia Beach, we're the safest city in America, between 400,000 and 500,000 people. So it's not like I got to watch the murders and everything like that. Right. But here's a funny dynamic about the news. Years ago, I was working with the New Orleans SWAT team, and they came up here to Virginia Beach. Well, New Orleans is one of the most violent cities in America, right? And so these SWAT team guys, they're used to, doing, serving high threat warrants, and they're dealing with people. Right? If you go watch the 6 o'clock news, you can't get through all the violence in 30 minutes, let alone the weather or anything else, right? And so we're meeting these guys at a restaurant, and one of the guys is late. And when he gets there, and this is a massive dude. This is a big, tough guy. And he's almost crying. And we're like, David, what's going on? And he's like, I was watching the local news. And we're like, what? And he goes, yeah, there was a story about a dog that got lost. Because that's like the kind of stories we have here, right? And right. He's never been used to seeing that in the news. There was no human interest stories because they have to get through the tragedy that happens every day of the week. Now, a lot of that stuff largely happens on the internet. Right. But what you're saying earlier about how you queue up your browser and how you accept data and go find data, that's what people are doing. They're doing it long form. But I also think, because when people have an opinion, they never think they're wrong. Right. I mean, they think they might understand that they're not fully informed and fully correct, but everybody thinks, hey, my morals, the way that I process and say, hey, that's okay. Everybody does it. And it's if you look at it, like if you have a friend, everybody's got this friend that thinks the world's out to get him and cheat him. Right. And why? Because they would do that. Right. If they can go scrape a nickel off the table or get around the system a little bit, they'll do that. And because nobody thinks they're messed up, that they have this problem, they think that how they behave and how they touch the world, that everybody touches the world in the same way they do.
Right.
And it's multiplied now when you talk about doing it digitally.
Oh, it's a massive multiplier.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. There's a well understood psychological principle of projection, right?
Mhm.
I'll project my angst, fear, and good things too out onto the world, and that's how I filter reality. Yeah. And so part of the human condition, exactly as you described it, is such that I just operate on the assumption that everybody else operates equally, right?
Right.
Because that's how I see the world. And so, most of the time that works because we're around suitably like people and it's suitably balanced good, bad. But then you get that one friend, like you're talking about, that has a very negatively skewed view of reality. And exactly that, because they're projecting their own inner dialogue out onto the world because they would do I'll say it differently, they'll make bad decisions. And so I had a friend like this and I explained to him, look man, just run the numbers, think about this. You think the world's out to get you, you think the world's full of idiots and so forth and so on. How many people have you met? Maybe let's say in your lifetime you can meet 1 million people, which is a lot.
Yeah.
It's still less than 1% of the population. So you could go through your entire life meeting only what you think to be true. Idiots, assholes, morons, whatever, right? But that doesn't mean the world's really like that. It means that's what you're part of. And so this is the beauty of the internet. And it's the beauty of technology. And I think this is the ethic that I would like to see kind of immortalized, if you will, if we can ever do it that way, is what technology, in particular the internet and these social media platforms, ought to be doing is providing us a means to step outside of our echo chambers, not get locked into them. You know what I mean? And
Right.
I don't know how that manifests in the algorithm itself.
But
I tend to think.
But technology right now is it's the next generation of humans, right? If you move into a new city, and even I go back in when I was a kid, like moving from Virginia up to Massachusetts. And what's the first thing your parents did? Well, they found a church that was like the one that you were in. When my dad went to work, they found there was a homogeneous group of people. They were all engineers. Where do you hang out? What do you do? And you start trying to find those social norms, the things that bring you comfort. Right.
Right.
One of the things I say when I speak is like, in order to be great, you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Right.
But that's how you affect change, right? Comfort, you get sedentary. You're like, okay, I got what I need. I don't need to really look any further. Right. That being the case, we wouldn't, everything would still be Eurocentric for, largely people that look like us. And we wouldn't wonder what was going on when they got to the water's edge. Right. So somebody was uncomfortable and said, hey, I got to go. Now that sometimes tilted on its head because people want a certain outcome of life. Right. And so, and then also people that violent, and you take it, you go globally and how humans behave that, hey, I'm over here. The way I run my country is the way, now you take it from individuals. The way I run my life is the way I want you to run your life. Now the way countries run each other, and now what tools did we use manually by putting things in the newspaper and doing all those things in the 50s and 60s, now that all that stuff can just be pushed into the public middle of the road, so to speak, for us to Chinese bazaar it and take what we think is important, right? And you get it home and like, oh, that's not exactly what I thought it was.
Right. Well, and I think I don't think social media is good to talk about. And I think it's easy to pick on in these cases too, so it's poignant. I don't think we've seen the last evolution of the technology, but I don't think the problem's with the technology itself so much. I really think it's more of an ethical standard and some morality on the individual user's part of how to engage not only the technology as its own thing, right, but other human beings vis-a-vis that technology.
I agree, and I think a lot of it is this: there's a lot of people that don't feel they have a voice, right, or that want their voice to be heard as fact, but also don't feel that, hey, I could physically, like in the human space, walk into a big crowd of people and have my opinion be listened to. Right. Give them the anonymity and the offset of the internet. And now they can act as if it's fact. Right. And then what happens? Other people get defensive. And if you're not in proximity with each other, I can't feel. right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
people are like, oh, you get the feels, right? And then people discount feelings, right? It's not
Right.
feeling
Right.
so much as, hey, what happens to you, physiologically, the chemistry of your body when you hear things that you disagree with, and then sometimes you feel threatened, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that idea is so wildly like opposed to anything I think about. I'm getting fearful that there's a person out there that might want to make this the law, right? And so people react in really bad ways, and but a lot of it now I think comes down to the fact that we're comfortable on the internet stifling people's opinion. Right? If I disagree with you, that's a reason to hate you. That's a reason to cancel you, right? And get you out of my life so I don't have to listen to you. And I think I'm interested to know, like, the high point, what is, like, and it's a generic term, but the whole safe space thing for kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
You go to some of these even public high schools in Virginia Beach, you walk in and you'll see the big yellow placard that said, "This is a safe space," right? My personal opinion is that one of the things that was great about college education is you got to hear a lot of people, and there was dissent. You heard things from professors that you were like, oh, I never really thought about that, right? And so, to me, when you start making safe spaces and saying, hey, I'm in here, don't tell me anything I don't want to hear, you're not properly preparing people for what they're going to experience for the rest of their adult life, because you're going to hear a lot of things you don't agree with. And I don't have to agree with you. I honestly, I don't have to agree with you to be your friend, right? And I think we're losing some of that because we insulate people to a much older age, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. There's increasing evidence that, well, like, here's a rough analogy. Peanut allergies. There's a lot of growing evidence to show that the reason peanut allergies are becoming so prevalent is because we're not exposing kids to peanuts.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
and so you can have these genetic anomalies that cause allergies, right? But peanut allergies in particular, it's been demonstrated that even with it, right, if you have gradiated exposure to it, you can eliminate it.
But that's like,
and this is just true from
it's a flu vaccine, right? Why do we give somebody what happens when we give somebody a flu vaccine? We give them a micro dose of it so that you can build up the antibodies so you can better defend yourself.
That's right. And so, roughly speaking, thought is the same way, right? Look, okay. It's not that this is a big thing too. And this is one thing that I think social media, through its lack of ethical implementation of AI, if I may say it that way, misses, is it's how things get emphasized, right? And so the dialogue at High Point is encouraged to be filled with conflict and dissent, but in a rational, professional way, right? So I've never seen a safe place placard, and all the way up to the president of the university, it's always been articulated the exact opposite. We want you to have discussion. We want you to disagree. And this is what's important to me. This is what I was saying about social media missing it through the algorithm. We want you to learn what it's like to disagree and how to handle that. And you've talked about this before, right? Maybe this is kind of our segue to leadership too. It's not about the content anymore, because I'm not trying to convince you that I'm right and you're wrong. We're not adversaries. There's an idea, and we have different views of that idea, and let's learn how to handle being different so that we don't lose track of that idea, because the idea itself is important.
Right. No, I totally agree. And I think, when you start to try to get this, so somebody leaves High Point, now they want to go get a job, right? Or somebody leaves any university, right? And one of the things that I hear and I've heard is, I can't work with millennials, right? This is by people in my age, right? And it's like, well, then retire, go home, because the oldest millennial is 34 years old, and he's probably a director or junior VP at your company, right? It's one of the reasons, like, when I go talk to some of these organizations that are special operations guys are transitioning into the workforce when they retire, is like, you guys are going to be great leaders, because your whole career, as you've gotten older, E3s are still the same age, right? So you're used to dealing with 18, 19, 20-year-olds, right? And, and people are like, oh, the military's this, that, and the other thing. Walk onto a United States aircraft carrier on the flight deck. The average age is 19 and a half. It's the most dangerous 4 acres on Earth. and it's a dance. And it's by intelligent young men and women that all have a common goal, right? They're not coddled, right? They're not put in a safe space and they're parking multi-tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of jets 3 inches away from the edge of an aircraft carrier, right? It's either put it in the sea or keep it safe for flight again, right? And
right.
You get into, and a lot of it is that chase. So if you're used to handling that, right, good for you, right? But I think this kind of bridges both those. If you look at life and go, hey, I've got a group of people over here that they're not that they're being miscreant or anything. They just don't understand what we need to have done and how. Number one, because they've never been asked to do it, or they've never been in a position to be accountable, right? And to me, when people start talking about safe spaces and kind of how it manifests, I know what the intent was, but how it manifested, it's like, if I'm being asked to be accountable for my thoughts and my thing, or if somebody disagrees with me to the point where I can't correctly articulate a counterpoint, I get to go have a timeout. Right? Yeah. We're like, just, stop for a second. I don't have a well-formed argument enough to state my opinion. Right? Or I don't want to be thought of out of the norm. And so I think from a leadership perspective, when you get young folks that come in, and this might be the first time, and I always tell them, hey, look, bad parenting and technology has a lot to do with where you're at. Right? Whether it's every kid gets a trophy, right? And we now know that that's unbelievably psychologically damaging to the kids that know they weren't deserving of that. To how younger kids, you see kids walking around. I saw a kid the other day at a restaurant or something like that walking in. Kid can barely walk, and they're holding on to one of the handled cases for an iPad. Why? Because mom and dad want to eat, and they want to have an adult conversation for 20 minutes. And guess what? That kid's going to go to sleep at 7:20, 8 o'clock at night. You can't wait until then to have an adult conversation, right? And so by the time those kids are an adult, there's two things that happen. One, they have a missensed place of where they fit in the system of the hierarchy of good and bad. And again, I'm not saying that all of them think that they're great. Some of them struggle with the fact, do I belong? And not in an imposter syndrome. It's they've been given a trophy their whole life, metaphorically. And now they're like, hey, this is big boy time. I'm getting a paycheck and I don't want to lose my job. But how do I know where I stand? Because I know that person graduated from a better college than I did with higher grades and had a better internship and all these other things. How am I going to compete? They've never been given the tools. They've never been kicked off the team, right? And that's the Michael Jordan thing, right? Michael Jordan, arguably the greatest basketball player and one of the greatest athletes in the history of time, did not make his sophomore team, JV team, or whatever it was. That fueled him for the rest of his life, right? So much so, in what I believe is an unbelievably small ball play, invites that coach to his Hall of Fame induction speech and then berates him in front of the world, right? That's the far end of, hey, I've fixed my not making the team ever in my work ethic and everything like that, to the point where you hold on to that grudge so badly. But why it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to him, right? And not making the team sometimes when you're young is the best thing that happens to you, right? And we've removed a lot of that. And so when young folks get into the workplace, now it's not necessarily I don't want to do the work. It's I don't understand how I'm going to fit in and get my piece of the pie. And so a lot of people in that are C-level folks that are in my age group that are struggling. And I also want to go like, hey, did you not raise a couple of these kids? Right? Like, right. Like, that kind of thing too. Right. But is the concept of empathy and accountability. Go look, right? You got to have a talk with it. You've got to get out of your office and you've got to go talk to folks and go, look, I get it. This is foreign to you because you've never been asked to do this before, both socially, from a work function place, we're going to put all the tools in front of you, and you have to live that, right? I'm going to give you every tool that we can to help change your behavior for the positive, to make you a functional, quality member of this tribe. But here's the thing, you have to want to do it. And at the end of it, if you can't, in a certain time thing, we're going to hold you accountable to a standard. And if you can't, we're going to have to move on.
Right.
And how this is not going to work is if you don't interact with us. If you don't interact with us, we can't tell your progress. And it can't be, I assign you on something on one day and 30 days later, you show up, your homework's not done.
Right.
Yeah. And we want to create this success for you and help you be participatory in your success. But we need to have accountability at the end of it. Right. And when you say that to leaders, they're like, man, that's a lot of work. Well, hey, look, we can't grow talented employees the way that we were grown, because we don't live in the same world. Right. We definitely don't live in the same world. Right. And it's watching sports, and because I'm a big believer that sports properly set people up for life. And because it's a team thing, you have to learn how to interact. And if you're not the best person on the team, you have to learn how to be a good cheerleader, right? And if you are the best person on the team, you have to learn how to take that person and help them maximize the opportunity that they have. But more importantly, you have to learn how to accept coaching and criticism, right? I will tell you what, you want to watch, you go watch high school basketball, right? You go watch high school basketball and you watch what happens on the side. And coaches are a lot more cognizant of their outward behavior, of what they can say and how they can say it. But tell you what, there's still some shit that happens on the sidelines, right? And I don't mean that in a bad way. I think very direct feedback in a timely fashion makes a positive outcome. Here's the other side of this. You now get to a point where HR, human resources, it has an unbelievable oversight responsibility for the social piece of what goes on in the workplace, like they've never had before. But it all rests with the responsibility of the CEO, right?
Yeah.
They want to give authority as quickly as they can for the HR piece to every HR leader, right? And how quickly, we got to get rid of the HR leader because they let that happen. No. You create a culture in your company of respect, or you don't. All right, period. End of discussion. I'll give you an example. You get a company where one of the C-level employees has a direct report. They start dating. Everybody in the company knows they're dating. It gets brought up. I mean, you can't have that, right? I mean, it's not what we do for correct function. You have two choices. Go, hey, well, you're gone. And not the junior person. It's always the senior person, right? Because you fire the junior person, it doesn't mean anything, right?
Right.
You as a C-level employee know that this behavior is inconsistent with what we do, right? So what do? You take the junior person and you move them to another department. You move them to another department with another C-level person that thinks that behavior is okay.
Oops.
Right? And shocker, the wheels come off the cart later. Well, now the blame game starts, right? And things get bad. And the fact that the CEO can rationalize that's really bad, right? Because now you're saying, hey, this kind of behavior is okay. And I think for the junior person, it really devalues. If they're really good, they're always going to be devalued. That the only reason they're getting promoted, the only reason they're getting a raise is because they have a relationship with somebody in the executive team. And if they're if they're bad and they're allowed to stay, oh my goodness, right?
Yeah.
Well, how does that happen? Well, if that CEO, when he was growing up, saw in the 60s and 70s that bad behavior from other C-level folks when it was deemed to be acceptable in however you define acceptable, right? Now that it's totally considered out of bounds and unacceptable, you allow it to exist. And then when that blows up, how do you handle it? right? 'Cause you've given up the ethical / moral / business high ground a while ago. And then you get an HR leader who is like, I'm really not comfortable being the one to stick my head above the ground to get it chopped off and go, hey, we can't allow that to happen.
Yeah, which is crazy because, at least within business, the whole idea of having a code of conduct, let's say, is to memorialize the decision of what our ethic is as a group, right? And so if we say as a group, this is our ethical guidelines, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that, we're going to do this, so forth and so on. What you've done, in my mind, is you've taken the decision making and memorialized it so you don't have to memorize it. And so, right? Anytime I think about doing something, I've pre-rationalized the solution. I don't need to sit and rationalize it anymore because it's already done. And more importantly, it's agreed upon by what should be enough people that there's social pressure to follow it. Right?
And there's, and I like looking at, I understand you have to have rules in life, right? I get it, right? Yeah. That's why we have laws and everything else, right? But I think in the workplace, and I think it works really well in team sports as well, be a standards-based organization, right? Because you start to elevate maturity, right? And you start to elevate the ability of leadership and create a culture where I am gladly giving authority to smart people, right? And to everybody in the organization, because we have standards, right? And you reduce the aggregate amount of nitnoid rules you need to have, because, and I'll use it as an example of having been a SEAL. Like, hey, we're going out jumping. We're going to start jumping at 6 a.m. So the standard is, you can't be liquored up when you show up to go skydiving, right? I mean, you can, it's just it's not allowed, right? So the standard is, should I have a rule that tells you don't go out and get drunk that night? Or do we have the adherence to a standard of professionalism?
Right.
So, but what that requires is the senior leaders and the people that are saying, hey, we're going to be here, that they don't show up hungover, right? Because then that's how you create that culture, right? And you have two things. You have performance and trust, right? And people, it's by example, right? Do you hire people as a senior person, CEO, CEO? Do I hire or do I attract people that I consider to be more intelligent than myself? I hope I do, right? Because if I'm the smartest guy in any room, we're in the wrong room. Yeah. Right? And I truly believe that, right?
We're all in trouble.
I have certain skills to get people to work together and to imagine and have a vision. But how am I going to execute that? I don't know. I can't do all the coding. I can't do all this. And I want somebody to go, hey, here's my vision. And I want somebody to go, okay, I see where you're going, but we got to go this way, not that way. Because if we go over here, there's lions and tigers and bears. Over here is where we're going to really advance. And you have to be accepting of that and create that culture.
Yeah.
But
right.
You can't be, you can't be the guy that is like, hey, here's all these rules, but they don't apply to a certain group of people, right? And that's really kind of what happens in the SEALs, like, because a lot of leaders or a lot of C-level people, which what you go to the C-level, you're advocating that you're going to be a leader, or like, hey, I made it. I finally got to see if I made it. I'm in. I can relax. Well, no, that's the time you got to show up and you got to be more disciplined. You got to be more diligent. You have to have more oversight of yourself. Right, your regulation, your self-regulatory mechanism needs to be at a better place. And if it's not, it's incumbent upon the person that's senior to you to go home.
Yeah.
Right. You're not ready for this, and you can say fire them, do whatever. But the net of it is, as the military would say, we've imposed special trust and confidence in you, and you betrayed that confidence. Right.
Yeah.
Why you should understand. Like, I shouldn't have to tell you that sleeping with one of the junior people is a bad idea.
Right.
It's a really bad idea. Right? Yeah. It just, you didn't get that? Like, I'm sorry I didn't write a memo for that. Right? But
and I think this is some of the angst sometimes people try to express by taking this back to where we kind of started with this conversation of, I can't work with millennials. Well, no, what it is you don't recognize. This is my opinion of comments like that. This is what I've told people when they say it around me. No, what you don't realize is you're recognizing in yourself you lack the ability to lead people that are lost, right? And so put yourself in a young person's shoes going into the world today. There's millions of them all competing for the same position, and they're unlike us, me and you, right? They're in a situation in which they're already prosperous. So they don't have that want. They don't have that desire to fulfill a basic need because it's already well met. And so how do you can't climb a ladder that you've already climbed by nature of birth, right?
Right.
I mean, you're not fighting for food and nothing's trying to eat you, so you have no struggle. And so how do you make sense of competition when you've never competed? You said that. It's perfect. And well, man, that's hard to lead.
Yeah.
And so like, here's a poignant example. Give me your feedback on this. So I open up the new Cyber Lab, teaching my first class in it, first class on campus ever. Beautiful facility. The university spared no expense in letting me set up whatever I wanted. And at the same time, IT on campus, as you might suspect, is very nervous. And they've said more than once that they're not a fan of this because they're worried about students taking what they learn and running amok with it. Okay.
Here's the thing, and this is my response to that. Go to the chemistry department and ask them if they're building bombs or when they get done with the chemistry department. You guys are stupid. Flat out stupid.
Well, and that's what I've said. And to make it even more of a bridge statement, you're not talking about all the software development we do. Nobody's, I mean, you don't care that we're writing malicious code, but nonetheless, so I took it upon myself in trying to lead my team, as it were, and lead this class. Beautiful students, man, very smart, juniors and seniors. And I told them this very point blank. We're in a situation in which all eyes are on us. This is a very popular space. And there's a significant portion of people that are already have the mindset that we're going to cause harm. So let me explain something to you. Don't ever do anything on an unauthorized system. And here's what unauthorized means. Because here's your sandbox. This is where you do everything. Do not do anything outside of this sandbox.
Right.
Therefore, right? And so let me set the expectation then for our ethical behavior. I'm giving you a free sandbox. You can do whatever you want in this space and you'll cause no harm to anybody, probably not even yourself, but at worst yourself. And we can work through that. But if you do decide to cause harm, here's the penalty. And it's severe. And here's how I can watch it, and here's how I'm going to enforce it. And so this, as a tribe, is what we're going to agree upon as our standards. I mean, I don't know how else to do it, especially when you know you.
I've given you an environment to go do everything you could imagine. But you also need to understand that there's two ways. Am I going to use my powers for good or evil? Right? Right now, you don't know what either one of those are.
Right.
We're not there yet, right? Part of this learning journey is to understand what you can do, but also recognize that if you allow me to take you on this journey, at the end of it, when you get out of school, you're going to be highly sought after to do this. Right? And it will be an unbelievable, tool in your tool bag of life. Right?
Right.
When you were talking about people being unprepared to compete and stuff like that, and if you want to watch the world work, go watch, and I keep coming back to this. Go watch basketball, all right? High school basketball, and you watch some teams, and because I watch a lot of girls basketball because I have a daughter that plays basketball. Every team, every girl, you look at people that at school. If that school is one of the most disadvantaged schools in the city, in the area, then every one of those girls is unbelievably aggressive about going after and playing basketball. You didn't take a school, especially some of the private schools, where all the kids are middle or upper middle class. The girls are technically good; they understand where they're supposed to be, but a lot of times the aggression's not there, right? Because hey, if I don't get a college scholarship playing basketball, if they're or I'm here, I'm not I'm not planning on it. If that doesn't happen, it doesn't matter because mom and dad are going to pay for school. Or I have a vehicle to be successful and go to the next step. A lot of people this is my ride. This is how I move from where I'm at to where I imagine I want to be. And I say that because as a 15 to 18-year-old, it's that old adage, the person that's sitting there without a bike wishes they had a bike. The person that has a bike wishes they had a car, and so on and so forth, right? Because everybody's looking up to the next step rather than going, hey, where I'm at right now isn't bad. Do I want to do better? Well, why do I want to do better? Do I want to do better for me, or do I want to do better because I want to help society? And the answer should be both, but a lot of times it's not, right? Because you view your place as, I heard of a really wealthy guy talking to another wealthier guy, right? And it's at this point, it's just strata of extreme amounts of money. He goes, if I had your money, I'd burn mine. Right? I'm like, what a great line. I'm like, I use that all day long. I'm like, hey, do you mind if I use that? And they're like, no. And so think about that. Like, you get to a point where having resources is about keeping score, right? Well,
yeah, right.
You look down and you start looking in 7th, 8th grade, 9th grade basketball. And I also think some adverse behavior of parents isn't about them being bad people. It's about them putting pressure on kids because they know that if they don't compete to a standard where they can get a college scholarship, those kids aren't going to school. And they really want that for their children, but they don't personally have the resources. So how do we manage that, right? And if you look now in college recruiting, the number one thing that will get a talented athlete not recruited is parental behavior.
Yeah.
Right? They'll come sit next to you in the stands. Right? One of my daughter's friends is a year older than her, and her mom was telling me that she's watching a game, and there's some fan sitting next to her at the end of it. It was the assistant coach, because they want to see not just how you yell at other people, but hey, if something happens adverse to your child on the court, are you looking left or right to blame the coach rather than saying, hey, the player needs to be better, right? And how does your daughter, how are you accepting coaching for your kid, right? Because that's really what it comes down to, right?
Sure it is, yeah.
And if you want from a social experiment, I tell you what, and you want to have fun, go sit and watch high school basketball and watch the parents. Don't even watch the game. I wish I could base in the fans and turn around and just look up at the parents sometimes, yelling and screaming, coaching and stuff like that. And they're yelling at the refs, right? And especially, it's like I say, look, if this ref could be coaching an NCAA Division I basketball for the money that they make as opposed to $50 a game, they would be. They're doing the best they can, right? And does it affect your child in the moment? Yeah. They get a foul, they get knocked down, whatever. But let's go over horizon of time. And the fact that you're saving years off your life by just letting this bother you so much. You know what I mean?
Well, right. I had a conversation with a couple in the stands at a high school basketball game years ago when my stepson was playing. And I said to the other father, imagine that you got the desired result that you really want by yelling at these. He was yelling at the coach. Imagine you get the desired result, which in the immediate moment is you want that coach to not be the coach anymore because you think he's done bad. And then imagine you keep doing that because now that behavior is normative, and so that outcome always happens. Every time you complain or yell or bitch, that person gets removed. What are you going to do when you run out of coaches? Right. Because that's what's going to happen.
Well,
and so it's the same thing with the refs.
Yeah. They're having a hard time filling refs now, and they're having a hard time filling coaches, right? Years ago, my daughter's on an AAU team, and the team was really close, probably the closest group of athletes that I've seen. And one of the girls showed up. Now, I don't blame her, right? I blame her father. Her father would shop her around to teams all the time. And when she would be coming up the court, she would look, and this is when she was 9, 10 years old, she would look over to her dad, like the coach would call a play, and she would look over to her dad to see if it was okay for her to run that play, right? Yeah, as you can imagine, the coach, who was extremely competent and put McDonald's All-Americans into college and everything and was volunteering his time, basically took umbrage to that. But it was in the most creative way.
Yeah.
He basically told the parents, he goes, look, from now on, I'm going to have a chair that's going to be separated from the rest of the chairs. So there was, 14 or 15 chairs, and then there was one chair that was 4 or 5 feet away from the other chairs. If you see your daughter sitting in that chair, it's because you're coaching her from the stands. Mm-hmm. And this girl was getting coached. She would look at her dad. He would coach her. He pulled her off the court after a while and basically sat her in that chair. It was the last time we ever saw her. Dad yanked her off the team that day. Mm-hmm. Right? And he's continued to do that. And my daughter's friends with her. And this girl, she's a nice young lady. And I feel badly for her because she has a lot of angst about playing sports now. And
Sure.
I said to her about going from team to team. And she's like, I just don't make friends. Well, wait a second. Team sports, especially at that age, is all about making friends. I said, I have friends that are parents of kids my daughter played against. You see them in town. Like one of the girls in that school, great young player, tore ACL and her MCL. We played him the other day and beat him. And I basically, the first thing we did after the game is I went up to her and said, hey, man, I wish you were out there playing today, and talked to her dad, because we do, right? You want to win the games. Yeah. These are all young people that are growing up doing the right thing. And it's, when most of the bad stuff that happens in high school and is of adults and parents, right? Now, and like I said, on a lot of it, I empathize, because if you look at a parent and go, I got almost no resources. And it's like the old ad, like the thing where, giving a hungry kid some food a bad idea? Well, guess what? The NCAA until recently thought it was a bad idea. And you want to talk about some ethical dilemmas, right? Giving a kid and it came down to this, that a school was going to get a violation because they were having cream cheese with the bagels. That cream cheese and bagel was considered a meal. And that was an unauthorized benefit, but without the cream cheese, it was considered a snack, and that was an authorized benefit. And then you had kids that, especially playing football, you get 320-pound linemen that 3 squares a day wasn't enough for them, because you're asking them to maintain weight and do all the other things, right? And that brought about cost of attendance. But now we went from a college education being enough to now you look at in the revenue sports of basketball and football in particular, of your name and likeness has been removed, right? They used to put even still, they'll sell jerseys on campus with the player's number on it and make money off. They're like, well, we don't have a name on it. Well, wait a second. Everybody's buying it because of that kid's number. Like, you guys have lost your minds. Like, you've absolutely lost your minds, right? So where's the top, right? Does, and I think for sports, the best thing that ever happened for girls was Title IX, right? Which gave them equal access to scholarships and facilities and everything else. Here's one of the unintended consequences. The intention was to elevate the number of scholarships that were available to women so that they could have equal access to sports. And it's done great things. I mean, the NCAA women's tournament is on the heels of the men's tournament, and it's almost as popular, right? Mm-hmm. Saturdays now on ESPN and all the other channels are geared towards men's basketball. Sundays primarily geared towards women's basketball, right? And the WNBA, they just signed a new contract with the players, and it's elevated the base salaries and everything like that, right? And so
that was this week, right?
Right. But if you look at it, really, here's what it really did. The positive benefit is, and I say this all the time, that 94% of women that are executives, I mean, directors to CEO in tech today, all played a team sport in high school. 54% of those played that sport in college. What that says is the glass ceiling, right? It was about an old boys club, right? People learn how to, when I was a kid, we learned how to play team sports. And I'm going to say this, and people are going to at me on this. And I'm not talking about the cheerleading that's gymnastics competition, masquerading as cheerleading. I'm talking about girls that stand on a sideline, jumping up and down with pom-poms, they've been taught and were taught how to tell a guy he's doing a good job. Right?
Right.
You can disagree with that, but that old thing, tell me I'm wrong. Right?
I don't know how anybody argues against that. That's the function of a cheerleader.
Right. You're just learning how to tell somebody they're doing a great job, right? Mm-hmm. But here's also the change that when even 20 years ago, like, girls were being told like that, hey, by their boyfriends, quit playing sports so you can come watch me play sports. And they did it.
Yeah.
Right. They did it. Right now, you'll see in the stands, all the guys are coming. They watch the girls play. Right. Mm-hmm. The boys coach is tweeting out before the girls game, hey, come watch number 10 play number 11 in the state for, statewide implications, right? Here's the kind of the adverse side, or the unintended consequence of this. There's only so much scholarship money to go around.
Right.
Right? period. It's a finite resource. So if we're going to say and do the right thing and say, hey, we're not going to give primacy to the men, right? We understand there's a positive outcome that's happening by giving access to every student on campus. What happened? A lot of men's gymnastics teams went away, rowing thing. And so they're like, hey, what's a big team? The gymnastics teams are a big team. Swim teams are big teams, right? Mm-hmm. Baseball is a very odd scholarship sport. Most of the students are on half scholarships, right? There's only 25 scholars. There's only X amount of scholarships assigned, and there's more players. And so how do we manage that scholarship piece, right? And everybody thinks, hey, when you go to school, you get a full ride and it's free. Well, no, there's varying gradients of free. So you're telling me the baseball team works less than the football team? It's not true, right? No. But how many schools does baseball generate revenue? Almost none. How many schools does football generate revenue? A lot. Yeah. The easy one is basketball. Why? A football team requires a big-ass stadium. 80 players are on scholarship, plus that support mechanism, plus equipment and everything like that. What do I need to have a basketball team? I need to have something that probably exists on campus already, a gym.
Yeah, exactly.
I need to go out and get a shoe deal and an apparel deal for 15 players. All right? And a coaching staff of 3 or 4, not a coaching staff of 12, right? And so where you have roughly 120 plus or minus D1 football programs, you have 300 plus basketball programs, and any school president that's saying, hey, I want to bring some luster because the alumni will get involved and it leads to better donations and things like that. It's some measure they're going to want to get basketball on their campus, right? Because it's, again, the aggregate cost of delivery of that from scholarships and everything is negligible. And so I can make a much better financial decision, right? And you go to a lot of the elite private universities like Emory and stuff like that. They have great lower tier athletic programs. And those kids are coming in, and the alumni are very, very responsive to it. Even now, the high school level, right? Where my kids have gone, they wanted to bring big boy football for a while. I think they completely mismanaged how they did it, right? Because in my opinion, when you hire a coach who has had academic fraud issues at another school and you bring him into a higher academic thing, and then the wheels come off the cart, and then you wonder why, right? And then I'm like, wait a second. I'm like, Professor Plum was in the kitchen with a candlestick, right? And we just didn't catch it, right? But you know what?
Yeah.
Like, they said they decided they wanted to change direction, and they moved on, right? And that guy went to another public school. He went back to the public school system, and he's out there killing it as a football coach. And he puts a lot of kids into college, and that's a good thing. But you have to understand, I think you have to know yourself, right? Whether it's as an institution, as a workplace, or as a person. What are we trying to accomplish, and how are we trying to accomplish it? Right? And I'm not saying we're being high-minded or anything. It's like, hey, we have standards, whether they're academic, social, faith-based, however you want to do that. And so how do we get there from here? And I think that's when the ethics creep in, right?
Yeah.
And do you feel as a leader or as a professor that obligation, right? And that's, when your chest gets tight a little bit, when everything is like, whew, maybe I got to do something a little bit different because I'm not feeling so good about what I'm doing today. And if you don't have there's a great line about some gangsters and stuff, in order to be a gangster, you have to have an ethical bypass at birth. Right? Because you start to say, hey, these things are okay.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's the old thing. Like, even Hitler loved dogs, right? When you say like nobody's 100% bad, right? Even Hitler loved dogs, and people go, oh, what was it, like too soon? But think about that.
And you can rightfully say Hitler liked a lot of people. There was just even more he didn't, and the steps he was willing to go to in not liking certain groups of people were pretty extreme.
How many people did Al Capone feed in his life? Because he grew up poor.
Well renowned for soup kitchen work.
Right. You know what I mean? And it's like, of the day, he said, hey, now, did he have an ulterior motive so that most of the people in the city were empathetic to him not getting arrested and thrown in a jail cell? Absolutely. But he did go, I got hungry people over here. What am I going to do? Am I going to, like, like we talked about with global organization, I got hungry people in Africa. Let's give them a computer.
Yeah.
No, they probably need to eat. Let's just talk about that. Let's just get somebody something to eat, right? And so that ethical dilemma starts sometimes in really bad places, and people can, it's a justification, right? If I get the justification out of my life and say, I'm going to do this, whether it hurts me or not, right? And me personally, it's kind of your personal journey. It has at times. We go, look, this isn't right. You can't behave like this, right? And you say it to a person that's senior to you. They have the power, to vote yes or no on that, right? And the Roman Emperor syndrome, get out, and go to a place that you're not going to enjoy so much for a while and think about it, right? And that I think drives people into bad behavior. And I don't mean bad behavior and their behavior is adverse. I mean they're not going to speak truth to power. Right. And in doing so, they're going to have their personal power taken away.
Yeah.
Right. Because silence, people don't give power away. Right. Nobody can take it from you. You have to give it away. Right. It's like the old adage. Nobody can make you feel less than unless you allow it.
Right.
And I hate to see people like that. And, especially people that you love that are close to you. That you have great friendships with, and they're struggling to be successful at something, or they're struggling mightily with something, and you're like, what you're struggling with is you've given some of yourself away.
That's right.
Right, and now you want it back, and it's too late to get it back with that person.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so now they start to barricade themselves off emotionally, socially, whatever, and is that good? Right, because now you go into explain mode. Right.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
And it's the whole thing. It's like, some folks that are really near and dear to me, and one in particular, that it's like, don't say sorry all the time. Right.
Yeah.
Because you're giving that away. Walk into a room and say, hey, you were late. Right. For example, I know I was late showing up. Hey, thanks for understanding that I got tied up back there. Mm-hmm. Because now you're telling everybody you appreciate them. Not I'm seeking forgiveness and giving some of yourself away. I really appreciate your understanding, and move in that direction, right? Because people are going, okay, cool, I get it. I'm late sometimes, right? And instead of getting on people like, you walk in and say the old thing where you walk in late and people start looking at their watch like they're trying to tell you something.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, and that's a big thing for, I think, especially young people to learn too. There's a reason why, even if you don't personally want to, it's probably in your best interest if you're going to be part of a repeated group to show benevolence and grace, because eventually you're going to need it too from the same people. And so what does it really cost to be nice and be understanding? As long as somebody's not being a jerk.
Gratitude is the debt you pay for a great life. All right.
Yeah.
And if you're fearful and angry, you can't be great. I say it everywhere I go. Mm-hmm. I'm going to continue to say it for the rest of my life. All right. Because when I was fearful and angry, I couldn't be great. However I define that personally. If I live a life of gratitude for myself and those around me, then I can go a lot further, because it's about energy, right? When I walk into a room, I don't walk in the room fearful and angry. If I think I am, I got to go check myself. Right? I'm going to be late, right? Because I don't want to walk in and people feeling that energy that something's wrong, right? Now, we've both had bosses that thrive on putting people on edge by understanding that, oh man, I just don't want to get yelled at. Right. And creating that culture. But guess what? 24 months into it, people are voting with their feet. Right. They're not, most, especially in the tech industry, you're not required to stay there. I mean, you're not required to stay at High Point. Right. I think you're at a point in your life where they're treating you well. You want to provide great value to them and the students. And you want tenure because you want all the benefits that come with that, and you want to create a life there, right?
Yeah.
And
it's a harmonious bargain, and what people eventually realize is, short of putting a gun to my head, there's nothing you can do to me. If I don't want to be here, I'll just choose not to be here, and it's not a negotiation, right? Right? I'm not going to come to you and threaten to leave because I want more money. I'm not motivated by money anymore.
But here's the other thing too, and this is more like, emotional, right? That if if by chance something was the other way around, like with personal relationships in particular, you have great relationships of love and courage, and you want to be with somebody, and how badly do you want it, right? And is it
right?
I'll do whatever it takes to be here and to keep working, right? Because I believe in this, and it's hard, right? And some things are very simple, but they're very difficult. Most things in life are not hard. They're just really complicated, and it's the complexity that you're fighting for, right?
That's right.
Especially when you start talking about the emotions with you and other humans, right? What am I willing to do, and how long am I willing to take it, right? I'm a fairly patient person, right? And some of it comes back to SEAL training, and like we always have a saying, like, don't be in a hurry to die, right?
Yeah, right. I mean,
operational patience, right? I really want to go down to the end of that. I really want to go over there, and I want to start doing that. But I got other people over here that are doing this thing, and I need help. I can't do things by myself, right? And emotionally, what's the emotional toll that I'm willing to exert on myself? Well, if you truly love someone, something, the journey, no matter how long it takes, is worth it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And there's a certain ethic to that when people say, oh, I can't take this, I can't do it. Well, then it's not important to you. Right. You're going
you should probably let it go.
Right. That to me, that's the important thing. It's like, hey, I don't, I'm falling out of the sky. I'm holding on. Right. We're going to do this. Right. And, it's the old Thelma and Louise thing. Like, I believe in it that strongly that I'm willing to go. Can I do everything today? Absolutely not. Right.
No.
But
no.
Am I on a path? Even if you don't recognize how quickly I'm moving or not moving, like, the thing, I'm on a path. And, sometimes I'm saving, in relationships, I'm saving you from who I used to be. Right. Is that, you go, hey, I was here. Yeah. And you might think that, hey, we should have been here, done this and all these other things. But no, I need to be in a better place. Why? Because I need to be better. Right? Because ultimately you're not going to like the old me. Right? Because I don't like the old me. It's not that you don't think, this isn't about you. This is about, I didn't like the old me, and I had to do some things to change. Gigantic thing.
Well,
right? Or train off the rails.
I was just going to say, I think to finish my thought, at least, this is poignant. I had a student ask me a couple of days ago, hey, I'm looking at internships, and I think long-term, maybe I want to get into managing and leading. What does that really mean? And I summed it up this way, speaking about, to me, what really is an ethical mode of leadership. You have to be willing to step back and allow your sole function to be enabling other people to get better.
Yep.
And sometimes you got to give up your own getting better to do that. And then when you step back another layer, what you realize is that's actually practice for being a better leader, which is you getting better. But what you have to give up is like touching the keyboard, for instance. Yeah, you don't get to program anymore. What you're trying to do is make sure that the programmers continue to program, and whatever that means for them. And that's, to me, an ethical mode of leadership. It's reminding these kids that are trying to learn how to play team sports. It's not about winning this game. It's about playing the game in such a way that you continue to play the game in the future, if you really like it.
Right.
You can't win. So you can't allow winning to become the sole goal, because you'll, like we talked about with abusing the refs and the coaches, right? If you only play to win at any cost, sooner or later you're going to run out of games to play, because nobody wants to fucking play with you anymore.
Right. And it's hard. Like,
don't do that.
In college sports right now, I mean, I get, and I think it's a compact, right? The refs in college like especially big, D1 top 10 teams, you lose too many games, you're getting fired, right? And so a lot of times that emotion coming out has nothing to do with more like, dude, this is like, we're talking about my job, right? And if you disagree that strongly with anything, right? But again, it's everything in life to me comes back to relationships, right? And you're right. I think as by the time you get to be a leader, that you have to understand that, like, my job is, there's a business that needs to be managed and there's people that need to be led. I need to understand that business in order to be a better leader, but I have to facilitate people to be great. but there's some days where, I need to feel like I'm advancing, right? And there's that, you have to do that. And so what I think is that some of the best days I've had leading, and some of the best days I've had in relationships are when I felt I've helped somebody, and then I've watched them go to the next step and grow.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Because in whatever level that I've been a participant in their success, that's the emotional outcome that I get from it. Is like, hey, I know where you wanted to go. I've put in everything I can put into you, because my job is to believe in people. Because if I don't, why are you working here? Right? If I totally don't believe in you as being part of the future of what we're doing, why are you here? Right? And I think that's for relationships and everything, right? How do you look back at, I call them situationships, right? There's relationships, situationships, right? Think about when you have a young child right now, and you're going to get to this point where in school, there's 22 kids in a class, and every birthday party is a big deal. And you feel like you're going to a birthday party every week, right? Because you got 22 kids in a class, and somebody's got a birthday party almost every other week, right? Move forward 15 years, which is where I am now with my oldest. How many of those parents are you still friends with? Not many, right? Because you were in a situationship with them, right? Mm-hmm. And that defines it. I'm giving to you a lot. Right. And I'm giving that to you because we're in a relationship of some sort, whether it's business or whatever. But if you're going to be a true leader, you have to go, it's not about me. And it's the hardest thing to do. If I'm saying it's not about me, how do I get satisfaction? How do I grow emotionally and everything like that? In order to do it, I have to find growth in other people's success. And that's hard. And I was bad at that. I was really bad at that, right? Because I wanted to be someplace at a certain time on a certain date, and I wasn't getting there. Well, I wasn't getting there because I was busy, had both 6-shooters out, both my feet in the air, just continually shooting a gun at them, right? And so, as you grow and you say, hey, whether it's friends, people I love, everything, it's like, hey, I want to celebrate your success. And not because I want to say I had a part in it, because it intrinsically makes me feel better that I've helped you out. Right?
Right. Exactly.
If you don't reciprocate, kind of in the the please and thank you piece, and I don't emotionally feel like you're fully appreciative of everything I've done, that's okay. It didn't used to be okay with me. Right. And that's the bad part, right? Because then that was still the ego talking. Right. Look what I did for you.
You're right.
Right. Yeah. And I think to be an emotionally full adult, full leader, you have to be able to say, I'm going to give you everything I have. If you don't think that's everything, or if you're not appreciative of that, that's okay with me. Because years down the road, you're either going to go, I made a horrible mistake, and or you're going to kind of wander back, right? Because I like people that wander back into my life for whatever reason. Right? They went on their own journey for a while. They come back and like, dude, you're killing it. You're really busting it now. I mean, emotionally, socially, and everything else. And I think that's hugely important. But if you don't come back, that's okay too. It has to be okay. Yeah. It might not be okay when it happens, right? And certainly, but over the course of time, it has to be okay. Otherwise, you're still in that ego-driven mode where it's like, why did they leave me?
Yeah, right.
I did everything I could do to make them stay, right? To open my arms, to offer opportunity to stay, and to somewhat be understanding of who I am. Either they had their own agenda and they wanted to go because they grass is greener or whatever, right? Or they just didn't truly believe in me and who I was and what I was, what I was offering. Or they wanted it today, right?
Right.
It's saying, when do you want this? Now. Well, okay, when will you accept it? Because I can't give it to you now. No, but I want it now.
Yeah, right.
You end up arguing these logical fallacies because it becomes a circular conversation. Like, well, this happened. Well, no, it was actually this. No, but it looked like this. And it's hard, right? It's emotionally gut wrenching. And it is. The closer you are to the person, the harder and the more gut wrenching that becomes. I say that's
sure.
Get to be an adult and you try to help other people. And it's certainly, from now until the day I die, this is what I want to spend my life doing. Is getting people to go, think about, put yourself in somebody else's position and get rid of your own biases for half an hour, especially, when you're trying to make people better, whether it's family or coworkers or whatever, and go, how can I do that? And how can I not take offense, right? When people don't do it exactly as I said. Well, let's start with the fact, don't demand that they dance. Do you want square dancing or interpretive dance? Right. I want interpretive dance because I don't want to be ordered around the floor, which is effectively what square dancing is. I'm telling you what to do, right? Don't tell me what to do, right? I want you to get to a certain place. I want an outcome, right? I'm trying to coach you up for an outcome. Mm-hmm. I want to watch your dance moves. I want to watch you grow. I want to watch you fall down because you tripped over something. I want to help pick you up. And I'm not going to be offended if you take a path that I wouldn't take. Because you know what?
Yeah, exactly.
When you take that path and you're successful, I'm going to learn something.
Yes.
Right? And when I start learning something from somebody I'm trying to help, then we're doing the right thing. Because anything else besides that's nuts and cuckoo.
No, and for me to summarize, when I started to realize very recently that, and by doing that, I can actually get more accomplished if I just let go. It's counterintuitive, right? Like you want to be a master of your own destiny, but if you really want to lead other human beings, you have to let go of that. But by doing it, you actually get more control over your destiny. Like it's a weird formula the way it works. And it's hard to explain to people. Like, no, you just got to let other people be the best they can be. And through that, you can accomplish all things as long as you're managing those end goal states at sufficient levels, of whatever's going on. Too rule-based, too detailed, nobody will be successful. It's too constraining. Too loose and undefined, nobody knows where the fuck to go. You just got to hit that Goldilocks zone, which takes practice.
Rules without relationships is rebellion.
Oh, I like that, dude. I like that.
Right?
Oh. Rules without relationships is rebellion.
Yep.
Wow.
It's when it comes back. I can put rules on kids. I can put rules on workers. But if I don't have a relationship with them, if they don't understand or believe that I'm invested in their well-being, they're going to rebel.
Yeah. Right? That's true though, man. I'm really thinking that one through. I like that a lot.
I mean, that is in personal relationships too. Right. I have, you have to understand who people are. Right. And you would say that if whether it's family members, people dating, people falling in love and everything like that, I think a lot of it goes out the right when you have there's a mismatched expectation. And a lot of it runs around with, hey, I really love this person. I love everything about them. I love who they are. But I don't fully understand who they are. My expectation of their behavior is mismatched. It's misaligned with how they're behaving, not because, they're behaving incorrectly. It's because my expectation of how they behave is misaligned. It's the old thing. It's like the old Chris Rock line. He's like, when it was on the news and, some tiger zoo, like chewed up on a couple of people and they're like, that tiger went crazy. Like, no, that tiger went tiger.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
He acted in his own instinct. Right. And I have a funny story kind of thing. So, and it's about behavior. And I have a friend of mine who was in the Navy, got out, came back in, and he liked being on the East Coast and he liked being a SEAL on the East Coast. Well, when he came back in, the only place for this new young officer was to go to the West Coast. And so he's like, all right, I'll do it, because he wanted back in, right? He would do whatever it took to become part of that tribe again, right? He's like, if this is what it takes, this is what I'll do. Well, the first weekend, because this is how we treat everybody, he put him on duty. So he's answering the phones on a Saturday at the quarterdeck with somebody else. He doesn't know anybody. He's been there a couple of days. Gets a call from the San Diego police. And they said, hey, do you have so-and-so and so-and-so at your command? He's like, yeah, I do. Starts talking to him. He's like, well, they're down here at precinct, blah, 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 whatever. Can you come get him? And he had always said to me, one of the reasons, like he was an enlisted guy, went to college, came back in the Navy as an aviator because they didn't need any SEAL officer at the time, got bored flying F-14s. And so he wanted to come back and be a SEAL. There wasn't really why he got bored. He got bored because a lot of these young sailors, and this goes back into the late 70s, early 80s, the culture was different, right? It was a very the quality of individual you were getting back then is not what you're getting today as far as education, morals, ethics, just behavior, right? And he was a family services officer, and he got tired of leaving the front gate every afternoon and having to go into family housing because some E4 beat up his wife because dinner wasn't ready, right? And it was just it was completely draining to him. And so with that as the backdrop, he's now going, oh man, the first week I'm here, I got to go get these dudes that got arrested, and he's getting ready to go just get in the car and go down and pick them up. And at the end of the conversation, he says, what did they do? He's like, well, it's a Saturday afternoon in San Diego, right? He goes, we caught him drunk at the San Diego Zoo riding the zebras, right? And the cop had the best line. And he thought that was funny. I thought the best line was funny. The cop's like, apparently those psychological barriers only work one way.
Yeah, right?
Because they try to be cageless as much as they can. And so they put up, vegetation, plants, whatever it is. They'll put a moat there, whatever it is, to keep these animals from jumping out of their cage and being those animals, right? Well, it didn't stop two drunk team guys. And they went in and they're on there like giddy up and on the zebras, right? And he said to himself, he goes, I'm back. Because if you're going to go get in trouble, if I've got to come get you from jail, that's okay. I can work with that. I can fix that, right? Because, and especially go back in the time in the early 80s where what we were allowed to get away with and do was just, I can't even imagine it. Like when I talk to groups of young SEALs now, I go, hey, everything you heard about us was true and a lot of stuff you're never going to hear. But we also weren't involved with the national mission in the way we are now. Right. And so the light shined really brightly, right? If you showed up for what you heard happen in the mid 80s and before that, and you're upset you can't do that, you're in the wrong line of work, right? You should think back that here's the national mission and we're integral in what goes on. Right? And I try to articulate that in business, right? Like, hey, you want to come work with this company because, like, why did everybody in the early days want to go work at Google? They had great benefits, healthcare. You got fed 3 times a day, all the, you were told, and so people would go there. And they're like, well, I don't like the work. Well, no, that's not, you didn't sign up for the work. You signed up for the benefits. Right?
Yeah, right.
So
exactly.
What are they really feeding you? Are they feeding your soul and your being and making you better intrinsically? Or did you sign up for the eye candy? Right?
Yeah, right.
And I think like one of the guys, him, he went to, in 1 week, he went to Google. Then the next day he went to Apple. And he goes, one is primary colors, bean bags and everything else. And the other one is people working. Yeah. Right. They're on a mission. Right. And it's very minimal. Right. And it's kind of defined at the time by their leadership. Right. You have, head of design and Joni Ive, who's a minimalist, and then Steve Jobs, right? And so that whole design effort and those tech teams were demonstrably different. They were designed by the people who built the company, right? But, where am I feeding my soul, personally and professionally, right? And I think you can't be empty in either one. You can be angry about one or the other, but you can't be empty,
Yeah, no, I totally agree, man. I totally agree. Well said.
Man, we're on for almost 2 hours a day. Look at us.
I was going to say that's an hour and 3/4. Well, you can have productive conversations.
We can. We always do.
Yeah, man.
And hopefully we'll have Dan back next week.
Yeah, what to think of some good topics, and I'll try to guide him a little bit, as it were.
No, it's fine. I mean, here's the thing. I think it works fine. I think we could actually try to go 4 wide next week if we can get Ian.
I know, man. I'm really interested to see how the platform handles it because we've only ever done 3 is the most.
No, we did Ken before, right?
Did we do it on this platform? I don't remember, man. Well, I think we did do Ken. We did 4, but we may have still been on the old system then.
Okay.
I'd have to go back and look. But
I have high confidence in StreamYard's ability to do what we want to do.
Oh, I utmost unquestionable confidence. It can handle it. It's will I click the right button? So what I need to do what I need to do ahead of time.
You need to practice.
Yeah. Well, what I need to do ahead of time is get my little bot accounts to log in, and so I can add them and look what it looks like. And
just do it old school. Get 3 students and make it.
Yeah. Who wants bonus points today? Let's go.
Extra credit.
Yeah.
All right, my friend. Man. I thought it was a good week. I had a good time.
Yeah, I like this. I like the new format. I got I should be able to post some clips this week and see how that works.
All right, cool.
What I've been doing is creating like a little mini intro with some music.
Look at you.
I know, right? Trying to do better, man.
Little five finger death punch to start us out.
Well, I mean, if I had my way, I mean,
anyway. I'm a big fan of some gangster rap. I'm not, and I'm not joking. That's my closet thing. Is I like me some gangster rap. So
yeah, and well, I know Dan does too. At least for a long time, that was his drive into work, get pumped up. I don't know.
That's just because he's like three gold chains and wearing his hat askew. Good luck with that mental image, everybody that knows Dan.
Yeah. So I'll hit you up maybe Wednesday. We'll exchange some ideas and we'll go from there.
All right. Very cool, man. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks for sharing your Sunday. Bye.